صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. In the name of Allah, the All-Beneficent, the All-Merciful. Glorify the name of your Lord, the Most High, who created all things in due proportion, who determined their destinies and guided them, who brought out the green pasture, then made it dark debris. We shall teach you, and you will not forget, unless God wishes. He knows both what is open and what is hidden. We shall show you the easy way. So remind, if reminding will help. Those who stand in awe of God will heed the reminder. But it will be ignored by the most wicked, who will enter the great fire, where they will neither die nor live. Prosperous are those who purify themselves, remember the name of their Lord and pray. Yet you people prefer the life of this world, even though the hereafter is better and more lasting. All this is in the earlier scriptures, the scriptures of Abraham and Moses. And the gods are worth their truth. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Dua tawassul. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد، يا حسن بن علي، أيها المجتبى، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله، يا حسين بن علي، أيها الشهيد، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا علي بن الحسين، يا زين العابدين، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر، يا محمد بن علي، أيها الباقر، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله، يا جعفر بن محمد، أيها الصادق، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا موسى بن جعفر، أيها الكاظم، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا علي بن موسى الرضا، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر، يا محمد بن علي، أيها التقي الجواد، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا علي بن محمد، أيها الهادي النقي، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد، يا حسن بن علي، أيها الزكي العسكري، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا وسي الحسن والخلف الحجة، أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا ساداتي وموالي، إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فخري وحاجتي إلى الله، وتوسلت بكم إلى الله، واستشفعت بكم إلى الله، فاشفعوا لي عند الله، واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله، فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله، وبحبكم وبفقركم ارجو نجاة من الله، فكونوا عند الله رجائي. يا ساداتي، يا أولياء الله، صلى الله عليهم أجمعين، ولعنه الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين، آمين رب العالمين. صلوات الفاتحة. بسم الله.
जनाब हाशिम ज़फ़र से दरख्वास्त गुजार हूँ और आप खुदा से गुजारिश है अगर पॉसिबल हो तो थोड़ा आगे आइए प्लीज। थोड़ा सा मजलिस का माहौल बनाने बड़ा शुक्रगुजार हूँ, बहुत मेहरबानी।
मोहम्मद मोहम्मद
भारती का नारा है सलवात।
सलाम के चंद शान मुस्तफ़ा जौहर साहब का कलाम है। वालिद मोहतरम तालिब जौहरी और मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत। आए तत्हीर के मकसद का महवर फातिमा तत्हीर के मकसद का महवर फातिमा यानी शरह अज़मत नूरे पैगंबर फातिमा यानी शरह अज़मत नूरे पैगंबर फातिमा तत्हीर के मकसद का महवर फातिमा इनसे फैला दीन हक इनसे बड़ी नस्ल रसूल एक कौसर हैं अली और एक कौसर एक कौसर हैं अली और एक कौसर फातिमा आए तत्हीर के मकसद का महवर फातिमा कश्ती-ए दीने खुदा की ना खुदा साबित हुई शाबरो शबीर जैसे देखे लंगर फातिमा आए तत्हीर के मकसद का महवर फातिमा नाम है तस्बीह
गर्दन पे खंजर फातिमा आए तत्हीर के मकसद का महवर फातिमा आए तत्हीर कहती ऐ ज़बाने आल से कुल इस्मत मुस्तफा और उसका जौहर फातिमा कुल इस्मत मुस्तफा और उसका जौहर फातिमा आया तत्हीर के मकसद का महवर यानी शर्ह अज़मत नूरे पैगंबर फातिमा
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद।
शहरे उलूम शाह मदीना है मुस्तफा असरार किबरिया का खजीना है मुस्तफा कुलजुम है मारफत तौसीफीना है मुस्तफा तौहीद के उरूज का जीना है मुस्तफा तौहीद के उरूज का जीना है मुस्तफा आईनाए जली है खुदा की सिफात का इनकी सिफात पाक तारुफ है ज़ात का इनकी सिफात पाक तारुफ है ज़ात का होता रहा नबी का मरज़म बदम सवा आखिर घड़ी वो आई महशर हुआ शिद्दत ताब से की शिद्दत से ताब की ख्वाब में थे सरवरे खुदा नागाह दर पे आके किसी ने ये दीन दिला नागाह दर पे आके किसी ने ये दीन दिला बीबी मिले जो इज़्न हुजूरी जनाब है मिलना है जल्द मुझको रिसालत मिलना है जल्द मुझको रिसालत से बोली बुतूले पाके है शख्स सब्र कर तब है शदीद सो गए हैं सैयदुल बशर बोला अभी मिलूंगा जरूरत है सख्त इस मर्तबा कर जा किसी कहता था इज़्न दीजिए आना जरूर है फिर शय को साथ लेके भी जाना जरूर घूंघट बदल बदल के तड़पते हैं सुबह शाम, आँखों में अश्क भर के बोले शायरे इस वक्त मुझ पे गुजरी ये तकलीफ जिस तरह, ईज़ा ना दीजियो मेरी उम्मत को, ईज़ा ना दीजियो मेरी उम्मत को इस तरह। ये कहते कहते ढल गया मन का नफस झुका, उम्मत की याद में मरे मौला ने की कज़ा, अज़वाजे ताहरात में मातम हुआ बपा, रोई तड़प के मादर मज़लूम करबला, रोई तड़प के मादर मज़लूम करबला, पैहम बतूल खस्ता जिगर पीटने लगी, ज़ैनब बिना ने हाथों से सर पीटने लगी, ज़ैनब बिना ने हाथों से सर पीटने लगी। है मेरे पाका कश्मीर नादार बाबा जान, बेवाओं बेकसों के मददगार बाबा, है उजड़ गई मेरी सरकार बाबा जान, बच्चे तड़प रहे हैं करो प्यार बाबा जान, बच्चे तड़प रहे हैं करो प्यार बाबा, मेरे हसन को गले से लगाइए, बाबा हुसैन रोता है उठकर मनाइए, बाबा हुसैन रोता है उठकर मनाइए, आकर पछाड़े रोती थी बीबी जो ज़ार ज़ार, हम सदा ये आती थी कानों में बार बार, ज़हरा मेरे कलेजे के टुकड़े तेरे निशान, नाना के दोनों राजदुलारों से होशियार, नाना के दोनों राजदुलारों से होशियार, मेरे हसन हुसैन की शादी रचाइयो, तेरे बंधे तो मेरी भी तुरबत पे लाई, तेरे बंधे तो मेरी भी तुरबत पे लाई, रे उलूम व शाहे मदीना है मुस्तफा।
ऐलान के लिए डॉक्टर मुंसर साहब से और मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलाम।
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وسلم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It is in these days and these nights in which we commemorate the wafat of the holiest man to walk on this earth, none other than our holy prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. We also commemorate the shahada of none other than our second holy Imam, Imam Masjid-e-Ali al-Mustafa alayhi salam. These sponsors for tonight's program are the families of Mr. and Mrs. Faisal and Farwad Baby. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept their amal. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha for their marhumeen, your marhumeen, and for the marhumeen of all mu'mineen and mu'minat, including Sayyid Akhtar Hussain Zaidi, son of Sayyid Hamid Hussain Zaidi, as well as Shaheed Dr. Ali Safdar Zaidi, son of Sayyid Ali Muhammad Zaidi. specifically, we remember Dr. Amr Sayyid for his health. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him. Please recite with me verse 2 of Surah Al-Naml together. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Amman yujibul mudtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Amman yujibul mudtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون صلوات الله. Note regarding our upcoming programs, inshallah, our next upcoming program will continue to commemorate the Wafat of our Holy Prophet, the Shahadat of our second Imam, as well as the Shahadat of our 8th Holy Imam. This is going to take place this Thursday during the Shab-e-Jummah program. The Majlis will be recited by Maulana Sayyid Ali Haider Arabi, inshallah. We look forward to your presence for this Shab-e-Jummah program this week. Next week, we are going to be commemorating the Shahadat of our 11th Holy Imam, Imam Hassan ibn Ali al-Askari alayhi salam. This is going to take place next Thursday, or meaning the next Shab-e-Jummah program, and this is going to be recited by our resident Alim, Muhammad Sayyid Rizwan Rizvi. We look forward to your attendance in this Shab-e-Jummah program and in the next Shab-e-Jummah program. Before we proceed with the Majlis, just a quick update. Many of you remember during Arba'een we had our annual blood drive, and this was in honor of the Shuhada of Karbala, giving their blood to fight injustice, that we aim to uphold their legacy by giving blood to save lives. The blood drive company was actually, alhamdulillah, very impressed. They emailed us, they let us know that the response from the community was unbelievable. We surpassed their goal with almost 40 donations. And for those who are familiar with blood donations, each donation can save as many as 3 lives. So this community during Arba'een, alhamdulillah, saved 117 lives with your blessings and your dua. Of course, your reward is with Allah only. May Allah bless you and give us the opportunity for us to do this again in the following years, inshallah. Mu'mineen, inshallah, will proceed with tonight's Majlis. I'd like to request our respected President, Alim Maulana Sayyid Rizwan Rizvi, to recite tonight's Majlis with a nice and loud salawat.
الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الباصفين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلى محمد وعلى Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The night of 28th of Safar marks the Wafat of none other than Khatmi Martabat, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. We pay condolences to the entire Muslim Ummah, the scholars, Maraji, and especially Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, on this very sad occasion in which the man for whom Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala created this entire universe, the one who's the purpose and the wajh and the reason behind the khilqat of the entire alam. And this is the day which marks his wafat. I recited this ayat from Surah Ahzab, ayat number 21, in which Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, as many ayat of Quran talk about the uswa of Rasulullah. One of those ayat is this one. In 21 ayat of number 33 chapter, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. That indeed the Messenger of Allah is certainly a good example for those who have hope and faith in Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو, those who want to have, hope in Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and those who want to remember Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala often, because through the wujud of Prophet, these people will be able to remember Allah better. And that's why you find in Surah Balad as well, when Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala begins by taking the oath, He says, La uqsimu bihadha al-balad wa anta hillum bihadha al-balad. Saying what? That I don't need to swear by the city. Balad refers to city, Makkatul Mukarramah. Why? Because the city has Masalan Safa and Marwa in it, because the city has Khana Kaaba in it, because the city has Hajar Aswad in it, because the city has Zamzam in it, because the city has Maqam Ibrahim in it, Maqam Ismail in it, Arafat in it, Mina in it. Is that the reason why Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is taking an oath by this city? No, we find the reason why Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is taking the oath in the very next ayah when He says, وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ. The reason I'm taking an oath by the city of Makkah, which is Ummul Qura, the mother of all cities, is because, O Prophet, you reside in this city. The wujud of our Prophet in the city becomes the reason why Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is taking an oath by it. So for us to understand the importance of the personality of Rasulullah. And that's why this ayat also, if other ayat were not clear enough, this ayat clearly tells us, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. That if you want to find a role model, example for your lifestyle, look no further than the Holy Prophet. And what we find is these 12 Imams that come from the progeny, 11 of them come from the progeny of Rasulullah, were the Shabi of Rasulullah, were the example, complete example and the manifestation of Rasulullah. And that's why you all have heard this hadith a great deal of time. Awwaluna Muhammad, wa awsatuna Muhammad, wa akhiruna Muhammad, wa kulluna Muhammad. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Before I get into some of the fadail of Rasulullah, I wanted to mention two important points tonight. One, Prophet's duty, and second, how Prophet dealt with that duty. Number 2 point is people's duty towards him and how people dealt with Rasulullah. And this is only from the ayat of Quran, nothing more than that. Number one is Prophet's duty. What is the duty of Rasulullah? So that you and I can learn from it, so that we can make him to be our role model and our example. First duty that is mentioned in Quran regarding the Holy Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا نُرْسِلُ الْمُرْسَلِينَ إِلَّا مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ. We have not sent the Mursaleen and the Messenger except that they may be Mundhirin and Mubashirin. Two duties are mentioned. One is to give glad tidings, and the other is to warn the people. This is the perfect example for us as the leaders of our households. It says, "Ash-shaykhu fi baytihi kan-nabi fi ummatihi." An elderly in the house is like Nabi in the Ummat. Nabi's duty is to give glad tidings and warn. A household member who's the leader of the house, such as the parent, for example, can learn from this, that we need these two things in order to make sure that our children or those who are beneath us, those who are responsible, whom we are responsible for, they're dependent upon us. How do we deal with them? Mubashirina wa mundhirin. Unfortunately, we find in our culture, either you are only mubashirin, give too much love, and you never say no to the kids, or you're mundhirin. You scold them so much. Zindagi bhar itni dant pilai ke bachcha jo hai wo aage se pal ke kuch na bole. A lot of time people who were brought up in the culture back home, they give example. If our dad was here, he would have done this, and the child would not have said a word against it. Times have changed. Times have changed, things have changed, and those customs have also changed. So the perfect formula is what? Mundhirin wa mubashirin. Give glad tidings to the children, and at the same time keep warning them as well. These are the two things that you find normally in our automatic cars. You have the accelerator and you have the brakes. Unless you're driving a manual, then you have the clutch as well. But usually these are the two things. You have the accelerator and you have the brakes. Accelerator is to go. This is sort of like that, giving them leniency. And the brake is whenever they're falling into a ditch, you're going to go ahead and stop them. So this becomes that perfect formula for which Rasulullah was sent. He did that. He warned people whenever he had to, and he gave glad tidings to them as well. Number two example, or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to tell the Prophet, Lasta alayhim bimusaytir. You are not, in complete control of these people. Meaning what? Oh, Prophet, you're only there to go ahead and guide them. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. You're only there to go ahead and give them the teachings, provide them what we have sent for you. Lasta alayhim bimusaytir. But don't consider yourself to be unke par aap musaytir nahi ho gaya, musallat nahi ho gaye hain. It's not like you are, havi upon them, and this is how you deal with them. No. Just to the extent you go ahead and give teachings and provide our teachings to them. And that is as far as your duty is concerned. Why? If you go further beyond that, life really becomes difficult for you. And then the other reason and the duty of Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about, he says, Inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. So shahid and mubashir comes here again. وَدَّاعِيًا إِلَى اللَّهِ بِإِذْنِهِ وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. And you are to go ahead and call people toward us as what? As that illuminating lamp which guides people every step of the way. So these are as far as the duties of Rasulullah are concerned. You might be wondering, how did Rasulullah deal with these duties? What did he feel when he was taking care of these duties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had placed upon him? This is how Quran responds towards the duties of Rasulullah. First occasion, he says, لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ أَلَّا يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. Prophet was so worried about guiding the mankind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals this ayah. لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ. What does that mean? He says, you will perhaps kill yourself with anguish because these people are not accepting you. He's so worried about guiding people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ. You'll kill yourself because these people, out of anguish, because these people are not listening to you. So Rasulullah is guiding them, he's providing the information to them, but they're not listening. Rasulullah is feeling so sad by that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you might kill yourself with anguish because these people, that just shows you the worry Rasulullah had as far as the people are concerned. فَإِنَّكَ لَا تُسْمِعُ الْمَوْتَى. That, oh Prophet, you can't make those who are dead hear you. Does that mean literal dead? So again, the ayat of Quran should not be taken in the literal sense over here. فَإِنَّكَ لَا تُسْمِعُ الْمَوْتَى. You can't make the dead who are deaf, basically. Deaf ears, dead men walking. You can't make them hear what you're trying to tell them. So don't, burden yourself. Don't make it to be an overburden about yourself. And then he says, فَبِمَا مِنْ رَحْمَةٍ مِنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ لَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَنْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Oh Prophet, we gave you this soft heart. There was a reason behind it. The soft-heartedness which parents can also adopt. Looking at the uswat of Rasulullah, the example of Rasulullah is that soft-heartedness. You could still be in control while having a soft heart. He said the reason we gave you the soft heart is because if you were stern-hearted, people would have strangled you a long time ago. How many times have you seen that people strangle even the most knowledgeable of the people? The more reason because lack of akhlaq. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said regarding the Holy Prophet, إِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Oh Prophet, you are at the highest standard of morality. If there was a standard of morality, you would be at the highest level of it. You know how high? I want to give an example. I don't know if it'll fit here. That a child starts learning. You put your kids into school from first grade, or of course pre-K, kindergarten, and then let's just start from first grade. Easy to remember. And 12 years of high school education, 4 years of college education. So we'll call it grade 16, just for, easy understanding. So the child who learns from grade 1 goes up to grade 16. And usually by the time they graduate from grade 16 is when they start working, and education usually comes to a halt at that time. But the teacher who was teaching at grade 1 is not the same teacher who was teaching in grade 16. The teacher has changed, right? But the student in grade 1 is still called a student. The student in grade 16 is still called student. The teacher in grade 1 is still called teacher. The teacher in grade 16 is still called a teacher. Maybe a professor, but still implication is that he's the teacher. Now you want to look at the rutubah and the maqam of Rasulullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said 124,000 anbiya. That's not what we heard. The first one was sent as if he sent to that grade 1. Hazrat Adam alayhi salatu wasalam is sent as a Nabi. The first one is called Nabi. The last one is also called Nabi. The first one is also the student of that Nabi, and the last one is also the teacher, and the others are the student. When we look at the comparison between the first grade teacher, no disrespect, and the 16th grade teacher, we find that there's a difference between the level of their knowledge. Now look at the knowledge of Hazrat Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, the one who was given all the names, taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the extent he was worthy of sajda by the rest of the angels standing over there. Now look at the maqam of Rasulullah, that is the 124th Nabi sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What will be the level of that Nabi? Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And now that we are on this topic of prostration by the angels, I don't know if I mentioned over here, there have been so many majalis, forgive me if I repeat this, that it is very interesting to look at the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the angels. Have you ever noticed what is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the angels? To go ahead and do sajda to Adam. And the angels, they question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not on doing the sajda to Adam. They question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the fact that why are you making him to be your Khalifa? Right? نحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك. We are the one who do your hamd and tasbih. We are the one who do your taqdees, while you're making him to be your Khalifa, your representative. We are more worthy. In a sense, that's what they're trying. They didn't say that explicitly, but that's what they were implying. While he is going to go out and do what? Bloodshed, cause bloodshed, and we are on the opposite side. We are doing your taqdees. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you don't know what I know. And then he says, Adam has been taught some names. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the angels to go ahead and do sajda. But the fact is, why this concept of sajda to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it is mentioned now, many people will go ahead and call you to be mushrik. Many people will go ahead and call you to be innovator. Sajda to other than Allah, bid'ah, mushrik, kafir. All these labels will come about you. While none are going to say the same thing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِذَا صَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقْعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. I created Adam, then I asked them to go ahead and do sajda. It is an unusual request by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask the angels who are so pure in worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do sajda to someone other than Allah. And they had all the right in the world to question. Well, I'm saying in my own words, they were, of course, aql mahaz, and they were ma'soom. They didn't question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command over there. And they obeyed and they did work. But isn't it an unusual command by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Oh Allah, you're sending 124,000 prophets to tell the people that I am their Rabb and do my ibadat and no one else's ibadat. But you're the one who's giving this command to go ahead and do sajda to Adam? Of course, there's a difference between the sujood. Sajda to Adam was ta'zimi. Sajda to Allah is ta'abbudi. But who's counting? Who's looking? Sajda is sajda. One is ta'zimi, one is ta'abbudi. But who's looking at that? They're just looking at us. And that's why when the reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us or tells the angels something unusual is because he wants to point out amongst these infallible, masoom angels the face of a kafir. What did Ayah say? Ayah says that فَقَوْلَهُ سَاجِدِينَ, they all did sajda to Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Pay attention to these three qualities. That Iblis did not do sajda. Why? Abba. He just declined. He refrained. Wastakbara. He became arrogant. Wakana min al-kafirin. And he was always amongst the kuffar. He didn't become kafir today. You did not know. You were worshipping with him for 6,000 years. He was worshipping with you for the past 6,000 years. You didn't realize it, that he was amongst the kafirin. Today you're finding it out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew it from the very beginning. وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. The word kana refers to him being kafir from the very beginning. He was never a mu'min. He was doing sajda in your. So Allah, by giving this unusual command, is demanding what? To show and highlight the face of a kafir amongst those who are angels, amongst those who are masoom. Rasulullah follows the sunnah of Rasul. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, same way, when he asks for, give me pen and paper at the end of his life. Rasulullah, what are you going to tell the Ummat that you didn't tell in the 23 years? Is there something that you can tell? If I was to give you option that you have 1 minute or you have 23 years, what would you choose? 23 years. Oh Rasulullah, 23 years, you didn't tell us. You want to tell us in the last moment? Even Rasulullah will respond by saying, no, I have told numerous times. I've announced multiple times, but they weren't paying attention. I wanted to bring it into documentation. That's the only reason I'm emphasizing on it. There's nothing that Rasulullah can add to what he has already told us in the past 23 years. At the maqam of Ghadir, at the time when Amir al-Mu'mineen slept on his bed, at the time when he went to Tabuk, all of those occasions, the wilayat was announced. Oh Rasulullah, why do you want to tell us at the last moment? It's not to go ahead and inform the ummah once again. It is to follow the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah wanted to say, Kana min al-kafirin. Rasulullah wanted to prove the same exact thing. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So what is Rasul's duty? How did he perform his duty? Rasulullah said, when I tell you to do something, I do not mean to intend to go against your wills, because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding me to do. When he says, وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُخَالِفَكُمْ إِلَى مَا أَنْهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ. When I tell you to stay away from this thing, I don't want to go against you. It's just that I'm so concerned about you that this will lead you towards destruction. So this is how Rasulullah performed his duties. Those were the duties. This is how Rasulullah performed. Now people's duty. What is our duty? What is the duty of the Ummat? First duty of the Ummat highlighted in Surah Ahzab is Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Did you go ahead and send salawat on the Holy Prophet? This salawat is what? Sakanullah. This is also providing peace and comfort to you. When you send salutations to Rasulullah, this is a dua which is definitely accepted, and this is a dua which provides what? Peace and comfort to you. Go ahead and try it out. Whenever you find a situation where there's no way coming out of it, you make dua. When you put salawat in front, make your dua, then put salawat at the end on Rasulullah. You will find that dua will not be rejected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, the duty or the people's duty towards Rasulullah is an-nabiyyu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim. That remember this, Rasulullah is superior to you. We find people comparing themselves to Rasulullah all the time. The Rasul was like us. He was bashar like us, walking around in the streets and eating and drinking and marrying and whatnot. There's no difference between us and Rasulullah. While the ayat of Quran is very clear, an-nabiyyu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim. Nabi is awla, superior to mu'minin from their own nufus. Now let me tell you, when Rasulullah says in the Mubahila, nad'u abna'ana wa abna'akum wa nisa'ana wa nisa'akum wa anfusana wa anfusakum, that anfus was referring to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. If Rasul is awla bil mu'minina bi anfusihim, Ali is awla bil mu'minina bi anfusihim. Salawat bi Muhammad wa alihi. The third duty, the third duty that you find that people have to work, and all this discussion is from Quran. I'm not narrating any hadith for you. The third duty that you find that people owe to the Holy Prophet is this. Actually, there are many, but of course, we'll only handpick a few because of the time constraint. It says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'ullah wa ati'ur Rasul wa ulil amri minkum ila akhir. That all people obey Allah and obey the Prophet. How sad it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to point it out, spell it out to the people to do ita'at of Rasulullah. Don't be saddened by it, because you and I do mukhalafat all the time as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to do ita'at of our parents unless they tell you to do something which is against the religion. Right? Don't do their ita'at if they are telling you to do something which is against the religion. Other than that, you should be obedient to them. How many times our parents have asked us to do something which was not against the tenets of the religion, yet we disobeyed them? So when we have done that, then this ayat is very clear for us as well. There were many people in the time of Rasulullah that would disobey. Rasul will say, go do this. They will say, no, we're not going to do this. Rasul said, come to jihad with me. They won't go to jihad with Rasulullah. And Rasulullah said, we're going to go ahead and make a treaty. They will start questioning Rasulullah. That's why The sifat of mu'min was given in hisar. Innamal mu'minun. Mu'min is only the person. Amanu billahi wa rasulihi thumma lam yartabu. Mu'min, if you want to look at mu'min, mu'min is only, innama, we know the word innama. Innama is for hasr, in hisar, limiting only this person. Innamal mu'minun. Mu'min is only that individual who believes in Allah, who believes in the Prophet, thumma lam yartabu, and then does not argue with Rasulullah, does not go against the will of Rasulullah, does not question for a moment the command of Rasulullah. Rasulullah says, give me pen and paper, aktub lakum shay'an lan tadillu ba'di. I will write something for you by which you will never go astray. Person stands up and says, innahu la ya'jur hizbuna kitabullah. No, this person has gone mad. The book of Allah is enough for us. So you go ahead and do the justice. Allah is saying, Atiullah wa Atiur Rasul. Number 4, the ayat of Surah Hujurat. This is our duty towards the Prophet. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tuqaddimu bayna yadi Allahi wa rasulih. O people, do not excel or go ahead or venture ahead of Allah and His Prophet. We said we don't live in the prime time of Rasulullah, so I guess we are excluded from this. No. If Rasulullah said to do something, we don't, we are going ahead of it. But this ayat was actually revealed in the time there were people who were venturing ahead of Rasulullah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to again highlight for them, open it up for them, make it so much obvious for them. La tuqaddimu bayna yadillahi wa rasul. Don't start venturing ahead of Rasulullah. If Rasulullah tells you to do something, go ahead and do it. Battle of Badr takes place. Rasulullah says, we're going to move 17th day of Ramadan. They are fasting. They come out of the city of Medina. Rasulullah breaks his fast. Rasulullah is your guide. If he's breaking the fast, you should go ahead and break the fast as well. No, we're going to keep on fasting. We don't want to break the fast. Today you will find a similar situation. Well, I'm only going for 2 days. Why can't I fast? Or we're going to be traveling comfortably in the airplane. Why can't I fast? All these comfort, this and that, are coming about only to avoid the discomfort of fasting after Ramadan. Because how much easier it is for us to fast now while everyone else is fasting. I mean, if I skip it now, then after Ramadan, I'll be all by myself. So therefore, you find people start making these complaints as well. Why can't you fast? The ayat was revealed, La tuqaddimu bayna yadillahi wa rasulihi. This is our duty towards the Prophet. That don't venture ahead of Rasulullah. And there were people, when some of these commands were revealed, they would go ahead and venture ahead of Rasulullah. You and I do the same thing, even though we don't live in his time. Then the next very ayat says, La tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawtil nabi. Don't raise your voices above the voice of Rasulullah. You say, well, again, we are bari'u zimma. We're not living in the time of Rasulullah. Those who lived in the time of Rasulullah, when they raised their voices over the voice of Rasulullah. Now there were people, can you imagine? That people were raising their voice above the voice of Rasul. How respectful this is. And it was discomforting to Rasulullah. That Rasulullah is sitting there, he's talking, and people are raising their voice over him. An elderly in the house, when they're talking, even though their sound and their voice have gone soft and they have become elderly, so they can't really speak loudly, people pay attention. Because this is an elderly in the house. You show respect to an alim. You don't want to raise your voice over the alim. But there were people who were raising their voices over the voice of Rasulullah. Ayat had to come down to tell them this is wrong. Really? That much lack of humanity in you that a person who's guiding you, you're raising your voice, Allah has to tell you and point it out to you, spell it out to you. La tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawtil nabi. Don't raise your voices over the voice of Rasulullah. The way you talk with each other and yell upon each other. Why? If you do so, your amal are habt, null and void. None of your amal will remain. Qadi Ayyad, in his book Ash-Shifa, narrates a story. of Mansur Dawaniti in the time of course, sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. And of course, it's also the time of Imam Malik. Imam Malik is the second Imam after Imam Abu Hanifa. And he's sitting there in the Masjid of Rasul. Mansur Dawaniti comes in and starts making dua out loud. Imam Malik says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, la tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawt al-Nabi. Because Mansur is his Amir al-Mu'mineen. One thing is clear, in our madhab, the Amir and Imam are the same. Over there, your Imam is one and your Amir is different. So they follow the fiqh of Imam Malik, but they consider Dawanati to be their Amir. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, don't raise your voice over the voice of Rasulullah. Don't raise your voice here. Same reply that you get even today if you go to the Qabristan of Baqi. But they're dead. Rasulullah's dead. How is it that I'm raising my voice over him? Then Imam Malik said something. Imam Malik said, Hurmatuhu mayyitan ka hurmatihi hayyan. His respect and honor when he was alive is similar to the respect and honor after his death. Now, nothing changed as far as the honor and the respect of Rasulullah is concerned. His respect is still the same. When the ayat of Quran said, La tarfu aswatakum fawqa sawti al-Nabi, still holds true when you are in the barakah of Rasulullah. There are many points that could be derived from this word of Imam Malik, but we'll skip all of those, leaving it to your own understanding. Then Mansur said, what do I do? Should I face the Qibla? Because if you go to Masjid Nabi, you face the Qibla. Rasulullah's dhari is on your left-hand side. Should I face the Qibla and make dua, or should I turn to the Prophet and make dua? Imam Malik then gave a reply. This is in the book of Qadi Ayyar Ash-Shifa. He narrates the story. He says, Lema tusarrif wajhaka anhu. Why do you turn your face away from him? When your forefathers, from Adam all the way until now, everyone turned to Rasulullah, looked at him and made dua. Before the birth of Rasulullah, announcing the fact that Rasul was always there, from Adam till now, everyone turned to Rasulullah and made dua, asked for his shafa'at. Lima tusarrif wajhaka anhu. Why do you turn your face away from him? No, look toward Rasulullah and make dua from him. Salawat Muhammad wa ala. So this is our duty, to not raise our voices over the Prophet, over Rasulullah. How did we deal with these things? So I mentioned to you the duties of Rasul, how he dealt with those duties. I mentioned to you some of the duties of us, mentioned by Quran. How do we deal with these duties? Number one, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أو قتل انقلبتم على أعقابكم ومن ينقلب على عقبيه فلن يضر الله شيئا. If Prophet was to die, if he was to be killed, if he was martyred, will you then turn back on your heels? When was this revealed? This was revealed after many of folks had run away from the Battle of Uhud. Many of folks had run away from Battle of Uhud. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is scolding these people, saying what? Afa in mata. Of course, he has to die one day. Afa in mata. If he was to die. Aw qutila in qalabtum ala aqabikum. You'll turn back on your heels. Deen is still here that he had brought. That means what? People back then ran away and turned against Rasulullah. People today do the same thing. So we find there were people who were running away back then. You know, it's interesting that I heard that in Jami' Tirmizi, I believe the narrator was mentioning from al-Mu'mineen, there's a riwayat. She says that I take pride in the fact that my father was the first person to come back after having run away from the Battle of Uhud. They proved a few things, that he did run away, which is no doubt. And then the fact that she's taking pride in the fact that he was the first one to return back to Rasulullah after having run away. This is their own alim mentioning in Jami' Tirmizi. This riwayat is there and narrated by al-Mu'mineen, by herself, taking pride in the fact The fact that my father was the first one to return back to Rasulullah after having run away. Then Alim also mentions, it will be injustice if I didn't mention the only person who stood by Rasulullah all this time was none other than Amirul Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. And the second, how do we deal? Isbir ala ma yaqulun. O Prophet, have patience over what they have said to you. Have patience. That means what? People were taunting him. People were using bad words against him. They were ridiculing him. And this was something continuous throughout his life. Maulana also mentioned last night, he gave a reference to the person by the name As ibn Wa'id, who taunted Rasulullah when he was exiting the masjid. He taunted Rasulullah, and when he came back to his folks, they said, who were you talking to? He said, I was speaking to the man who's Abu Dhar. Because Rasulullah had lost his son at that time in infancy, that son had passed away. And that man taunted by saying, I was speaking to that person who was Abu Dhar. Thus Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, standing up in support of Rasulullah, reveals this ayah, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar, fasalli li rabbika wanhar, inna shani'aka huwal abtar. That indeed your enemy is Abu Dhar. You are not up to my enemies. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stands up for his prophet. And there are many such occasions that we find in Surah Duha and other places where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the seerat of Rasulullah and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, that indeed in the life of Rasulullah there's an example for you which you will not find anywhere else. And one of the examples of Rasulullah is his first grandson in the form of Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salatu wasalam. I know Mawlana has talked about it last night, but I wanted to just link quickly that our second Imam and the first grandson of the Holy Prophet came as a response to all of these tauntings that were being given to him. When people were calling him Abu Dhar, Imam Hassan's wiladat is the response. It is that Kawthar that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is promising to Rasulullah. And who is this man? Who is this child? People underestimated Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba, his valor, his bravery. You know, Maulana highlighted on all those aspects. Just wanted to share one tradition with you of our second Imam, and especially for the youngsters who are sitting here. This is for you definitely. Our second Imam, amongst his aqwal, he says, "Ajibtu liman yatafakkaru fi ma'qulihi kayfa la yatafakkaru fi ma'qulihi." It sounds better in Arabic. I'll try and translate and do justice to it. He said, I'm surprised. Ajibtu liman yatafakkaru, the one who is so contemplating fi ma'qulihi, that which he eats. كيف لا يتفكر, how does he not do tafakkur and contemplate fi ma'qulihi, about his mind and his intellect? Meaning what? It takes time to elaborate on this. Inshallah, I'll only take a couple of minutes before I bring to my side. That we are so careful what we eat, what we put in our bellies. I'm speaking to the kids. What we put in our bellies, we're so careful, although that is also a changing trend now. As soon as we see halal, we eat it. You got to be more careful about that, because every morsel that goes in you has a negative effect. So be careful when it comes to halal and zabiyah. But it's still, we're very careful what we eat. But we're not careful at all what we put in our minds and the food for our minds is. Food for our bellies, we're so careful. Food for our minds, we're not so careful. The story, I really like this story. This father, he had two sons. They were teenagers, and they wanted to go out with their friends to watch a movie. And they were all ready. The friends were coming. The father said, "What movie are you watching?" He said, "So-and-so movie. It's PG-13. The father said, "Oh, you can't watch that." He said, "Why? We're 15. Movie's 13, PG-13. We can definitely watch that." I said, "No. The standard of PG-13 is according to the society that we live in. That standard is not according to Islam. Right? There are things in that movie which are not appropriate for you, which the society considers are okay for a 13-year-old, but not according to our religious perspective. So the kids were really bummed out. The father did not let them go watch the movie. And so they went up to their rooms, saddened that, they were gonna have a good time with their friends. They were looking forward to watching this movie. They said to their father, there are only a few things that are questionable in this movie. The rest of the movie is really good. We'll learn something from the movie. There are only a few things that are questionable. We'll omit those. We won't even look at them. Father said no. Because every single thing that you put in your mind has an effect, a negative effect. He said, well, the kids were really bummed out, but it was only a temporary phase. They're not going to remain like this with their father. So he said, let me make it up to them. He started baking brownies for them because they really loved the brownies. He goes out and he prepares the brownies. They could smell it, all up from the kitchen up in their rooms. When he finished preparing it, he brings it up to their room. They see that, father's trying to make up to what he had done. And of course, all that stuff. He's here, I bake fresh brownies for you, the ones you love, the way you like it. But there's a disclaimer. I put something in it from our backyard, just a little bit of it. And just as disclaimer, but you should go ahead and eat it. It's tasty. He said, wait a minute, what did you put in it? He said, I'm your father. I'm not going to put anything which will be harmful to you, right? No, but still, what did you put? Well, we have cats, we have dogs, we have these animals walking around in the backyard, right? Sometimes some other animals walk around and they leave whatever behind, their waste behind. So I picked up a little bit of it, maybe some animal poop or something, and I put it into the brownies. Very minute amount, very small amount. He said, no, ew, this is disgusting. We're not going to touch this. We're not going to eat this. You crazy? Well, speaking to the father in that way, we're not going to eat this. We're not going to touch this. This is disgusting. Nobody should eat this. He said, you're so worried about the small, minute amount of something which is questionable in it to put in your bellies, but you were okay a moment ago to go out and watch something which would have messed up your mind. That's the qawl of Imam Hassan Mushtaba when he says, عجبت لمن يتفكر في معقوله كيف لا يتفكر في معقوله. I'm surprised at a person who's so careful what he eats and puts in his bellies, but so careless what he puts into his mind. Let's be mindful of that, learning from the kalam of our second Imam, Sallallahu Alaihi Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Rasulullah gave his hard work throughout his life, not just the last 23 years. The first 40 years, he brought up the community so that they look up to him from the aspect of him being Sadiq and Ameen. And once he was able to, through his character, bring them to the place where they would believe in him, then he started giving them the Islam that Allah has sent down upon him. The 23 years of hard work of Rasulullah, how much he suffered throughout. He would go to places where there were people throw pebbles at them, stones at them, to the extent that Rasulullah would be bleeding. Jibreel would come down. Oh Rasul, if you order, I will bring these two mountains together. None of them will survive. Rasul would respond by saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent me as rahmatan lil alameen. He did not send me to be adhab and ni'mat upon the people. He sent me to be mercy upon the people. Rasulullah will decline on that. Similar is the case when Imam Hussein raises the istaghasa, hal min nasirin yansuruna. The moment he raises this istaghasa, Jibreel comes down. Oh Hussein, you need any assistance? He says, go away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put me through this test. Rasulullah spent his entire life working for the mankind, for upbringing the humanity to that level where the Quran says, Al-Yawm akmaltu lakum deenakum. Deen was at takmeel, at Paya takmeel, and had reached that level, that peak which he wanted to bring. But the moment Rasulullah closes his eyes, and you know how he closes his eyes? When Rasulullah is on his deathbed, when he asks asks for a simple command. What is it? When our elderly, when they're dying, if they ask us for something, would we not go ahead and fulfill their request? But this Ummat, people who are regarded as very high and revered, they declined Rasulullah of his last request. They did not give him what he was asking for. They did not fulfill the request of Rasulullah. Can you imagine? Our elderly is passing away and he asks for something, she asks for something. Would we be so harsh to deny? Yes, people denied Rasulullah. And when Rasulullah was in his deathbed, sitting with his daughter, the daughter is weeping over Rasulullah. The daughters have their hearts and their emotions, and they're more emotional. She's sitting with Rasulullah. Someone comes, knocks on the door. She said, go away. My father is not feeling well. He can't be seeing people now. Will these people not ever leave you alone, O Prophet? Again, someone knocks on the door. She says the same thing. Rasulullah wakes up. Oh, Fatima, why is it that I see you, that you are saddened? She said, oh, Baba, you are in this state and someone keeps on knocking on the door. Rasulullah said, oh, my daughter, do you know who that is? That is someone who requires no permission to enter. It is the Malakul Maut. He wants to come and take my nafs and ruh away. But because of you, he's knocking on the door out of the respect of Fatimatul Zahra. I will say the door of Fatima, upon which the angel of Maut is knocking, asking for the permission. The moment Rasulullah leaves this world, what do the Ummat do to the door of Fatima? Angel will knock on the door, but the Ummat will bring fire on the door of Fatima, burn it down between the door and the wall. Fatima to Zahra would be impressed. Matam Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Ya Fatima Zahra, pursalo Muhammad ka. 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 जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब, ऐ शहर मदीना। जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब, लाई है ज़ैनब ऐ शहर मदीना, जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब ऐ शहर मदीना। अरे बंधवा के रसन हाथों में और खुतबे सुना के, अरे घर बार लुटा के, घर बार लुटा के, दीवार बड़े कुफर की आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना, जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना। जिस शहर में शहजादियों की तरह रही थी, नाज़ों से पली थी, नाज़ों से पली थी, सर नंगे उसी शहर में हो आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना, जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना। जो हिजरे पिदर में रही हर वक्त परेशान, सोई नहीं एक कोई नहीं एक उस बच्ची को जिंदा में सुला आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना, जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना। धारस थी बहुत भाई को, जिस भाई के दम से दिल पड़ता है गम से, दिल पड़ता है गम से, साहिल पे अकेला उसे छोड़ा आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना, जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना। हाँ अकबर नाशाद जो इस घर का उजाला, वो गेसुओं वाला, वो गेसुओं वाला, मरकद में अकेला उसे छोड़ा आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना, जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना। इस वक्त खुदा जान कदम निकले थे घर से, चादर छिनी सर से, चादर छिनी सर से, अब तक न मसाए से निकल पाई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना, जंगल में भरे घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब शहर मदीना। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता तेरी क्या बात करें। तूने जो आले मोहम्मद पे सितम ढाए हैं। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता तेरी क्या बात करें। हमसे कहते हो के शबेर का मातम ना करो। हमसे कहते हो के शबेर का मातम ना करो। हम तो गमख्वार है रोने के लिए आए हैं। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता तेरी क्या बात करें। लुट गई के वो बला में फातिमा की बेटी। लुट गई के वो बला में फातिमा की बेटी। इसके भाइयों के जो सर ने जो पे उठवाए हैं। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। छिन गई चादर ज़ैनब रहे अब्बास न जब। छिन गई चादर ज़ैनब रहे अब्बास न जब। आए बीमार को जंजीर भी पहनाए हैं। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कर दिया कत्ल बुला के घर मुसलमान तूने। कर दिया कत्ल बुला के घर मुसलमान तूने। आले अहमद के फर्द खून में नहलाए हैं। कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। कलमा गो ये तो बता तेरी क्या बात करें, कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। पुरसा लेते थे मोहम्मद जिस गले का लोगों, पुरसा लेते थे मोहम्मद जिस गले का लोगों, उस पे शबीर ने उम्मत से जख्म खाए हैं, कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें, कलमा गो ये तो बता हम तेरी क्या बात करें। काफिला जा रहा ए वतन के लिए, करबला में कयामत का एक शोर है, काफिला जा रहा ए वतन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा ए वतन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा ए वतन के लिए। कोई रोती है अपने जवान लाल को, रो रही है कोई कम सुखन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए। और अपनी बर्बादियों को गवारा किया, खून में डूबे गुलों का नजारा किया, दे दिया फातिमा का भरा गुलसितां, करबला तेरे उजड़े चमन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए। अपनी बर्बादियों को गवारा किया, खून में डूबे गुलों का नजारा किया, दे दिया फातिमा का भरा गुलसितां, करबला तेरे उजड़े चमन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए। जब चले थे मदीने से सब साथ थे, आनो जाफर थे अकबर थे अब्बास थे, जा रही हूँ मदीने तो कोई नहीं, अब मुसीबत फकत है बहन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए। कसरे जालिम कभी कैद खाने
दीन आ गई, हर जफा थी असीरे महल के लिए। काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए। कब्र कासिम से है यूं मुखातिब फुफी, तेरी शादी कुछ इस तरह बन में हुई। कोई से रे कभी भूल बाकी नहीं, वरना ले जाती कब रे हसन के लिए। काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए, काफिला जा रहा है वतन के लिए। कोई रोती है अपने जवान लाल को, रो रही है कोई कम सुखन के लिए। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन।
عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خليل الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا صفي الله، السلام عليك يا رحمة الله، السلام عليك يا خيرة الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا نجيب الله، السلام عليك يا خاتم النبيين، السلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين، السلام عليك يا قائما بالقسط، السلام عليك يا فاتح الخير، السلام عليك يا ماجد الوحي والتنزيل، السلام عليك يا مبلغا عن الله، السلام عليك أيها السراج المنير، السلام عليك يا مبشر، السلام عليك يا نظير، السلام عليك يا منذر، السلام عليك يا نور الله الذي يستضاء به، السلام عليك وعلى أهل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين الهادين المهديين، السلام عليك وعلى جدك عبد المطلب وعلى أبيك عبد الله، السلام على أمك آمنة بنت وهب، السلام على عمك حمزة شهيد السيد الشهداء، السلام على عمك العباس بن عبد المطلب، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وعنيس النفوس، أيها المدفون بأرض توسل ابن موسى ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك إمام الإنس والجان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، نجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك وانصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته.